Boker Tov, Morai v'Rabotai. We are continuing on Masechet Makkot, and we are on Daf Chaf Be'ed Amud Bet, the Mishnah, the last Mishnah, the third Mishnah on the Amud. Today's Amud is being learned as a schut for Refuah Shelema of Rachel Simcha Bat Nahid Esther. That today, currently right now, she's going under surgery. If you could take a moment to daven for her, a critical surgery that Be'ezrat Hashem should go well, and should have Refuah Shelema. Amen. This month's learnings of the community have been dedicated graciously by the Dayan family, by Shea family, and by Kohen families. It should be ultimate schut for all of their mishpachot, Be'ezrat Hashem. Amen. So starts the Mishnah, Ketzad Malkinoto. How do we actually apply the Malkuyot? We have spoken a lot about the Chiyuv of Malkut, how exactly a person becomes Chayav Malkut, how many sets of Malkut, how do we assess how many Malkuyot a person could absorb. Now, how do we actually do it? What's the process? And we're somewhat familiar with this because many communities have the minhag of having Malkut and Erev Yom Kippur. It's very much taken from this Mishnah, straightforward. Says the Mishnah, Kofet shte yadav ala amud. You put both of his hands, bend them on a pillar, helach va'elach, this way, with the two sides. Ve'chazan haknesed ochez bibgadav. Im nikra'u nikra'u, im nifra'u nifremu. The chazan, we learned that the makot have to be applied on a bare body. You cannot give it on the clothing. So therefore, he pulls down his garments. If they rip, they rip. If they rip on the seams, however it happens, you reveal his back area. Megale, achu megale et libo, ve'aven etna ma'achorav. The stone is a stage basically put behind the chazan. The chazan hakenesed omed alav. He stands on an elevated stage. And he has the malkut, the strap on his hands, and this is made of or egel. This is made of leather skin of a calf. That is folded twice, so it's 4 layers of leather made from a skin of a calf. Olot v'yordot ba, and it has stitches of a skin from the donkey. And we learned this from the Psukim, as we'll see in the Gemara. Tefach, this is Yada Tefach. It has a handle that is a Tefach. Urechavat Tefach, and it's also the width of the entire whip is also a Tefach. So it's a pretty heavy duty lash. It's not like a regular lash that you think. It is a thick 4-layer skin and width of a tefach. So it has to be long enough that when you hit in the back, the front of it hits the stomach. From the amount of the makot we said already in the previous Mishnah has to be divisible to 3. 2/3 he gets in the back, 1/3 he gets in the front. So imagine if he gets a full 39 makot, he'll get 26 in the back and 13 in the front. He's not standing fully when he gets the makot, and he's not sitting either. He is tilted. It has to be in a state of falling, so to speak. So, of course, he's leaning with his hands on the pillar, as we mentioned in the beginning of the Mishnah, but he is slanted, his body is slanted because of this pasuk. We want this to be strong hitting, so you do it with one hand, and you do it bechol kocho. You do it with all of his power, with one hand raising the whip, the malkut, and hitting. But he's not the only person that's there. another member of the Bedin is there also. Va'kore kore. We learn this also from the Psukim. This is a Gemara already in Masechet Keretot, Daf Yud Aleph, that we learn that it needs by Kriya. That's what the Gemara says over there. And the Mishnah continues, the Psukim that he reads, Im lo tishmor la'asot, it's a long text that we read nowadays. We only read the Vehu rachum yechaper avon, which has 13 words in it, and we repeat it 3 times. So this way also you have a rhythm and a count of how many sets you're giving. But again, there were different psukim that were read. The pasuk says, "Im lo tishmor la'asot kol divrei haTorah azot haktuvim besefer hazeh le'yirah et Hashem hanichbad va'hanora hazeh et Hashem Elokecha ve'yifla Hashem et makotcha ve'et makot zaracha makot gedolot u'ne'emanot chol ha'im ra'im ve'ne'emanim." This is the psukim that nowadays also, if you have in the Erev Yom Kippur thing, one person is reading these psukim from the Sidur, and the one who's hitting, he reads Vehu rachum. ויפלא השם את מכותך ואת מכות זרעך. חוזר, that those חוזר לתחילת המקרא is erased. ושמרתם את דברי הברית הזאת, וחותם, והוא רחום יכפר עוון, וישחית ברבה לאשר בפה, ויעל כל חמתו. Again, we mentioned this as a beautiful piece, that when you have ולא יעיר כל חמתו, HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not empty out, does not invoke all of his anger and wrath. That perhaps is an explanation of why, even though there has to be 40, we really do only 39. So says the Mishnah, continuing on this pasuk, ושמרתם את דברי הברית הזאת, ועשיתם אותם למען תזכירו את כל אשר תעשון. All of these psukim. וחותם והוא רחום יכפר עוון וישחית ברבה להשם בפה ולא יעיר כל חמתו. וחוזר לתחילת המקרא. Then this person that's hitting goes back, depending on how many makot he's getting, he goes back to the beginning of the pasuk. Now, says the Mishnah, ve'im meta had yado patur. If the guy dies under the makot, the person hitting his patur. Actually, if you remember, in second parak, this was one of the examples of a death which would not be considered a liability for going to Arei Miklat, going to the cities of refuge, because this is doing Birshut Bedin and is the Sorech Mitzvah. Right? We learned this from the father that would be disciplining a child. So this is one of the examples that the Gemara actually gives over there in the second parak. But says the Mishnah, Hosif lo od retzua achat umet harezek gole al yado. But if he on his own added one more number, he was supposed to get 18 for instance, right? And he gave by mistake 19, he added one, and the 19th was the one that killed this guy, then he's going to go to Arei Miklat, because this was no longer a mitzvah. Indeed, it's an avera, lo yosif. You're not allowed to add to what the assessment of the bedin would be, and therefore he would actually go to galut for an accidental kill. Says the Mishnah, nitkalela ben berei ben b'mayim patur. If under the pressure this person dirties himself, he has an accident, even though that you're not anywhere close to the number he has to get, you stop right there and he's patur from the rest, right? So imagine if he has to get 2 sets of malkut, and halfway through the first one, he dirties his pants under the pressure and pain, then that already is patur. Doesn't make a difference if it's number 2, number 1, he's patur. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, ha'ish berei ve'ha'isha b'mayim. Rabbi Yehuda says the man is only if he dirties himself with excrement, but a woman would be even with meraglaim, that would be sufficient. And the reason, as we'll see in the Gemara, is because the pasuk says, "V'nikla achicha le'enecha," that he would be lightened, he would be disgraced in your eyes. And already, when a person goes through this experience, that's like a public humiliation of high level, that would already pater him from having to get the rest of the malkuyot, the lashes that he was supposed to get. Says the Gemara.
Maybe there was no concern they would use this tactic specifically so they can get out of it?
Not necessarily. It's pretty embarrassing to get, especially a man like doesn't want to. That's not necessarily, the Moshe Cordovero writes in Tomer Devorah that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is carrying the avonot of a person, right, he cleanses, right, Noseh avon ve'over al pesha, that he is ma'avir the pesha also. He takes away, that imagine, he says, a person that has dirtied themselves, it's not just the excrement that you have to take out, but imagine if he has to wash and wipe and clean the person. Now that adds a high level of embarrassment to the person that sins, knowing that Melech Melachim has to clean it up, so to speak. Here, also it's in the middle of public scene, so to speak. It's a pretty embarrassing thing. If he wants to embarrass himself in that way, well, it's very hard to know if it's planned or not, but it's not something that you would plan on necessarily. Many people would prefer getting the malkut and not having to go through that type of humiliation. But nevertheless, the Gemara says, my tama, what's the reason that it becomes patur if they experience this embarrassing moment? Mishum nikla achicha ne'enecha, because of the bizayon, the disgrace that they have already endured, that patters them from having to absorb the rest of the makot that they haven't gotten yet. Amar Rav Sheshet, Mishum Rebbe Lazar ben Azariah, Minayin l'retzuah she'i shel egel. How do we know that it has to be from skin of a calf? Dichtiv arba'im yakenu. The pasuk who speaks about the implementation of the malkut is juxtaposed with lo tachsom shor bedisho, right? One of them is in Devarim Kavhei Gimel, and the other one is in Devarim Kavhei Dalet, mamash, back to back, right? So therefore, we learn a number of halachot from the juxtaposition of these two psukim together. This is one. We have had other ones. And we will see some discussion about the other ones as well. But says the Gemara, from the juxtaposition of these two psukim, we learn that you have to have a skin of an ox, of a calf. Ve'amar Rav Sheshet mishum Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah, minayin le'evama shenafna lifnei mukeh shchin she'en chosmin ota. How do you know, by the way, as we'll discuss, the Pasuk in Yeshaya Navi compares the sin of Klal Yisrael in a contrast with Shor v'Chamor. We just spoke about the Ritzuah having both elements of an ox and also a donkey. The Pasuk there says, Yada Shor Koneu v'Chamor be'alav, Yisrael lo yada mi lo hitbonan, the famous words of Yeshaya Navi reverberating, which we read it in Shabbat Chazon, right prior to Tisha B'Av. Our sinning and straying away from the path of Hashem has been contrasted in comparison with even these two types of animals. So you have those two intertwined together. As again, time allowing, we'll discuss it further as well. So says the Gemara, imagine if you have a Yivama who now has to deal with a brother-in-law, a former brother-in-law, that's a mukeshchin. He has blisters and boils all over his body. He's a sick man. That en chosminota, we don't force her to have to marry this person. Again, Yibum is a marriage that is already halfway there. They don't need necessarily Kiddushin and all the process, because it's already a zikah, there's already an element of attachment. Once the brother dies without children, the living brothers ought to be standing for his name, establishing his deceased mishpacha in Klal Yisrael. So therefore, that's already from Shamayim kind of like set up that they're going to get married. All they have to do is move into a house together. They don't need a kiddushin or anything of that sort, but it has limitations, right? It has limitations. Sometimes he does not want to do it, so he'll do chalitza. But do we force her to accept this marriage in all cases, even if he is a sick man with mukesh being a mukesh shchin? So says the Gemara, we darshan it from the same pasuk that we don't do it. We don't force her to marry this person from this very pasuk of lo tahsom shor bedisho usmichle, and the juxtaposition of the next pasuk is ki yeshvu achim yachtav. If the parasha of Yibum, of Yevama, is right afterwards. This is in pasuk Dalet, and the parasha of Yibum is pasuk Hey, mamash juxtaposed back to back. And says the Gemara, why is it coming right after the mitzvah of lo tachsom shor bedisho? It is because the Torah is hinting to us that even though that mitzvah Yibum is an obligation, but it's not applicable to all cases. If you would be having someone that objectively no one wants to live with, you would not force her to live with him either. So it says the Gemara, another halacha in the name of Rav Sheshet Mishum Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, kol hamebazeh et hamoadim kilu oved avodah zarah. Any person that disgraces the moadim, chas v'shalom, it's 10th amount of doing avodah zarah, right? Now, this is not talking about Yom Tov of Pesach and Shavuot and Sukkot and Rosh Hashanah and so on. This is talking about Chol HaMoed. This is talking about Chol HaMoed. If you don't respect Chol HaMoed, kilu oved avodah zarah, right? It's bad news. The Chtiv, as the pasuk says, I realize we're out of time. I'm just going to finish the sentence, but we'll come back to this. This is a fantastic topic to be discussed. It says the pasuk, Elohim masecha lo ta'aseh lecha. Again, this is the Gemara that talks about all these juxtapositions. And pasuk says, Elohim masecha lo ta'aseh lecha. Do not make idols. Do not create avodah zarah. V'samichle. And right afterwards, it says, Et chag hamatzot tishmor. Keep the 7 days, right? It's not talking about the Yom Tov of Matzot, right? Even the pasuk's talking about Chol HaMoed, because the full pasuk is Chag HaMatzot Tishmor Shivat Yamim Chal Matzot Shivticha LeMoed Chodesh Aviv. So it's nothing to do with the element of Yom Tov. It has to do with the element of Moed, and that includes Chol HaMoed as well, which is a fantastic topic to start with. Be'ezrat Hashem in the days to come. Hazaku Baruch.